checking in with the Business Not As Usual podcast with your hosts, Vince and Mike. And now, on with the show. Welcome back to this episode of the Business Not As Usual podcast. I'm Vince, and with me as always, Michael Martino. Michael, what is going on?
Vince, what's going on?
Oh,
what's going on?
Just things as we were discussing off air before the red light flipped on. Just the everyday minutia of corporate life. So you know how it is, and I'm sure everybody listening also can relate. So
yes, they can.
Yeah. So no fancy intro today. You seemed very fired up earlier in our discussion.
I am fired up. I'm fired up.
And that to me says there's something you want to talk about. So rather than me try to do some fancy throw, Mike, what do you want to talk about today?
You know what I want to talk about, Vince?
No, I don't. That's what I'm asking.
Okay, I know. Something from our last podcast with our favorite guest, Rhonda.
And only guest to date. But yes.
One of the things that I found interesting and we could dig into, because we talked about a lot of things in that podcast.
Mm-hmm.
There was a comment that she made that went something like, because I didn't write it down, so I'm doing it by memory. If we can document what you do in a day, then your job will be taken over by AI.
Yeah, I think it
Isn't
was.
that what she's? Some version of
like,
that.
If we can document your process, we could turn that into an automated delivery of it.
Automated delivery.
And I'm also paraphrasing, but yes.
So that was the gist of what she said. And we could have went down 1,000 rabbit holes at the last podcast, but let's go down this one, because that has huge implications to people's lives, to your business, transformation. It's just like a wide sweeping comment that we should dig into.
Wait a second. Are we going to talk about process today?
We are. Look how giddy. He's so giddy.
Okay. All right. This is like
twist my arm. Twist my arm.
Christmas in May.
That's right.
Or March, I guess. When
May. It's already May.
It's Christmas in March. This is great. Okay. Okay. So let's go down that.
So let's go down said rabbit hole. So if someone can do a good enough job of documenting what someone does in a day, and then we automate it, what does that mean for a big percentage of the front end of jobs, let's say, for companies?
So just
which are very transactional, let's say, and very like step 1, 2, 3 next, to 1, 2, 3 next.
So, and I think this was the point to Rhonda's fantastic book, is that if that can happen, you are at risk. Your career is at risk. Sorry, let me backtrack that a bit.
Yes,
because words matter. Your job. Because if you can automate that through AI, through robotic process automation, through and I'm a big fan of elimination. Like, my whole mantra of eliminate then automate. Don't just automate things for the sake of automating. Like, make sure that what you're automating is worth doing at all. But I think that speaks to a much bigger implication, which is it places a premium on thought. And we already know that we're in sort of the industry 4.0, the knowledge economy. And I think the thinkers are really going to be the ones that rule this next era of business and industry. And so it's that rational thought, it's that logic, it's the intangible soft skills or non-technical skills or whatever you want to call them. Those are going to be the skills that dominate in the next 10, 20, 30 beyond years, because those things are much harder to automate.
Yes, that is true. I also want to, if we dig into, let's talk about a contact center. So today, a contact center does do a lot of very transactional, like one and done type calls.
Mm-hmm.
Like, where's this? What
I need
happened to
to
my
pay
bill?
a bill. I need to thing. You
Or
charged me
I
too
didn't get my
much.
bill.
I didn't get my
Right.
bill. Right.
So if those things become automated, from like input perspective, and then a person can check on that in real time,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of front office work, that level of skill, like that's usually an entry level job.
Mm-hmm.
That level of skill becomes significantly higher
Yes.
because those calls are no longer going to be coming in the door, because they can check on them. They'll be so quick that it doesn't matter. So you're going to have a lot more knowledge and experience about the type of work your company does, because the one and dones are out the door,
Right.
because they're going to be all automated, right? You're going to have to do real deep conversation.
Right. Have I ever told you about my good friend Vilfredo Pareto?
No, you haven't.
Oh, okay. Let me tell you a story of my good
Why don't
friend.
you tell me about him?
Vilfredo Pareto. And by the way, that is his real name, Vilfredo Pareto, poor bastard. So Pareto was, and if you are familiar with the Pareto principle or the 80-20 rule, this is going to make a lot of sense to you. So Vilfredo Pareto was an economist in Italy, and he had done this research where he noticed that 80% of the country's wealth was controlled by only 20% of the population. And so, he did this research. It was sort of accidental, but whatever. And then he started to notice that same principle elsewhere. So his friends were like, "Dude, you need to like get this out there, because this is serious work." Because that's how they spoke in 18th century Italy, dude.
Perfect. They're like, dude.
And he's like, "Guys, come on. I can't put this out there. If I put this out there, I'm gonna be ostracized from society. They're gonna throw me away. Like, just no. I can't say that 80% of the wealth is controlled by 20% of the families. Like, what do you like? Come on, man." And so, being good friends, do you know what they did, Mike?
They went behind his back and did it?
They went behind his back and published it. And so this got out there, and he died penniless and alone. But he didn't. But the Pareto principle, this 80-20 rule, was seen to be in effect across a number of different things. So if you think about 80% of your customer transactions fall into the same 20% of transaction types, right? Bill requests and payments and whatever. 80% of your revenue comes from your top 20% of customers. Like, it's this principle. It's not exact. Like, don't come at me if it's like, well, 79% of my revenue comes from 23% of my. I get it. It's close.
Did you know in my company?
Yeah,
Because we're unique.
Right.
It's like 78%.
Right. And
you're wrong.
So already just stop. Don't at me. But roughly 80-20. So if you can, and so the reason I'm telling this story is not to show my knowledge of Italian history. the reason I'm telling the story is 80% of the calls into the call center that you mentioned earlier are probably about the same 20% of issues. And so, if you can automate the responses to that 80%, you now have 80% fewer calls coming in.
Mm-hmm.
To your point, the ones that remain are more difficult, right? And so they are the ones that require deeper skill or higher skill or however you want to say it.
Mm-hmm.
And so you're right. Those no longer become entry-level jobs, but they are more like skilled. It's more skilled labor to be able to answer those more difficult questions that aren't
Mm-hmm.
addressed by the 20%.
Yeah. And I think that kind of those entry level jobs are really the ones that are going to be the most affected, right? Because as people like yourself or people that work for you can write these really prescriptive step-by-step instructions and then have them automated.
Mm-hmm.
The price of entry, like being able to get a job in at the Royal Bank is going to be much harder because I'm just throwing on,
Oh, no, that's
right? At a big corporate company, if that's where you're going to go work.
This episode brought to you by
Brought to you by Royal Bank.
RBC.
And TD. I'm just gonna throw them all out there if
fine.
anybody wants to sponsor us.
Or give us money or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. So, it's going to be harder for people to get jobs in that scenario.
Right.
These type of kind of transactional jobs are going to go away. Just like, long haul truck driving jobs are going to go away. Like those people, the only jobs for truck drivers are going to be when the truck gets to like near a city and it has to park, it'll park itself, and then a person has to take it from where it's parked into like the depot.
Mm-hmm.
But beside long haul it's all going to be like driverless. Right. And so you need, as a person, you need to, and as your kids are coming up, those are things that need to be taken into consideration.
Right. And see, this is, and I believe we talked about this in the episode where we were with Rhonda. Like the intent of all this automation was to give us more leisure time.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so,
yes.
I know, and I know this is a pipe dream, but like that truck driver that the long haul driver who takes it from the depot to the city, or from the city to the depot or whatever, like, yeah, they're no longer doing those long drives, risking accident, like just they're not in the cab. Like they may be in the cab, but they're not actually physically driving for that period of time. Where this will play out is, do companies then take that to their advantage to say, well, you're no longer driving 12 hours. You're only driving 2. I'm only paying you for 2. So is the pay for the job, or is it for the hours? And this is, there's been a lot in, the idea of the gig economy, and people are just very transactional even in their work. Like, is that going to be, are we going to have an Uber for truck drivers? Where it says, who's available to take this from Des Moines to Minneapolis?
Right.
Right.
And so, and I know Rhonda made a comment about when, our generation is out of the way, the workaholics, and, millennials coming up are much more about leisure time.
Yeah.
But is that going to happen? To your point, if you're driving truck for like a long haul of 20 hours and you get, I don't know, whatever pay it would be, the company's not going to pay, and because everything is about maximizing profits or being efficient. they're not going to pay you the same amount of money just to take it from the parking lot to the depot, right? If that's only an hour drive. And so I think the intent was to give more leisure time, but then people take over, and that's why we can't have nice things.
Right. Well, then
Because we break
capitalism
it.
becomes a thing, and
Yeah,
yeah, and so there may be some resistance there, but if that is a better way, it ultimately will win,
it will win,
right?
and then, but now we have to, as a people, need to find other places where they can
Of
have
course,
careers and jobs,
of course.
or companies need to find in displacing people, it's not about just those jobs are gone. It's do you taking these people and moving them to other parts of the company that don't have that would need more of the thinking, as you say,
Right. Well, and I
right?
mean, I look back at a lot of my work um, orbits around the idea of business analysis and now enterprise analysis. That job didn't exist 20 years ago, not formally
Mm-hmm.
at least. Like, so yes, a call center rep role may disappear, but it will be replaced by something else. And I, like it's going to new jobs will take over. New jobs will emerge that we can't even fathom
Mm-hmm.
right now. Like we don't even we I have no idea what jobs will be hot in, like think about the iPhone, which is only 10 years old. Before that, who was building apps? Nobody.
Nobody.
Like so app developer didn't
Mm-hmm.
even exist, right? And now that is a viable career and a very lucrative one.
A very everyone's looking for an app developer. Like you command
Exactly.
a ton of cash for that.
Exactly. So, yes, let's be sad for the demise of the call center rep.
Oh,
But
it could. I mean, it could be any.
I know,
It's more like the transactional type.
I'm just
Do these
continuing.
steps.
I'm just
Yes.
continuing our example.
Yes.
We can mourn the loss of these roles, or we can celebrate the new ones that arise
Hmm.
like a phoenix rising from the ashes.
Of
Like
the
of the
transactional work.
transactional work, right? And I think
Yeah.
it's actually going to make us better because it's going to force you to think. Like I don't see that as a
Right.
bad thing. Now,
No, no, no.
what impact? Here's an interesting thought. Maybe we can explore this a bit. How do institutions of higher learning respond to this shift? Because
Correct.
in addition, with the exception of making online learning available, universities have been pretty stagnant of late.
Well, I think even uh, high school,
Oh, sure,
like,
yes.
and so when there's like when there's time in a day to we're going to teach you cursive. Like what? Cursive?
Yeah.
How is that time allotted in a grade seven's day? Who who cares? Or tests. Make sure you study. Well, studying's just I'm going to sit here, I'm going to memorize it,
Hmm.
and then you're going to give me a bunch of questions. I'm going to write down what I memorized. Why do we need to memorize anything? We
Hmm.
just go on like, isn't it better to have to teach people how to problem solve,
Yes.
and where do you find the information? And so if all if we continue to educate the same way, we're going to get the same people coming out the education factory, but into jobs that don't exist because
Correct.
they're gone.
Correct. So yeah, there's going to have to be some sort of response um, from institutions of higher learning. And I actually, it's odd.
Yes.
Not odd. It's a coincidental that I was just last night working on writing a little bit for my second book, and and that was one of the things that I talked about, was that for me, the benefit of university was not coming out with a degree. It wasn't, all the great friends and memories and all that. It was that it actually taught me
Friends and
it
memories.
taught me how to think and how to write and
Right.
how to craft an argument.
Right.
Where yes, I've learned to write much earlier, like physically, I could do the task, the function of writing. But it wasn't really until I got to university where it became, okay, you need to be able to synthesize information and turn it into an argument.
Right.
Because again, high school writing was largely research, write, which was copy paste,
Exactly.
right?
And it's now you need to weave a story. You need to be able to tell a story to sell an idea, right? It doesn't matter, and I'm not talking about like sales, but just as you work, ideas need to be sold. And if you can't craft a story that's tight and gives people all the information they need in a short amount of time and walks them from the beginning to the end, those are the skills that people are going to need as as AI starts to take over, instead of, hey, let's teach them cursive, or let's continue to do tests by memorizing, right? It should be, here's the question, go find how to make that answer. Like go find the answer,
Right.
and then craft me a story of trying to sell me what the answer should be, right?
Agreed.
Very important, Vince.
If only one of us knew someone who speaks on how to craft story from data. Look for that episode coming soon. I've got an interview.
Right.
I've got an interview lined up.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Oh, you do? Fantastic.
A very interesting speaking peer, and like all the people that I talk about, like Deming and Edwards and all these great thinkers in the process continuous improvement space. I talk about them. The person I'm thinking of, and you know who you are if you're listening, she actually worked with them. So like,
oh wow,
like OG, man, like she's an OG. So we got to get her on the show, and I'm working on that. Just finding a time.
Nice.
But that might be a good next episode, because that will craft all of this stuff together, right?
Yes,
We've gone from AI to what gets replaced and what you need, and the value of story, into using data and story to craft.
Right.
Yeah. Good. All right.
It's like we planned it.
It's all wrapped up in a neat little package. So we talked about some of the roles that will change. We talked about some of the broader implications. What can people do now to get ready for this? Because we're only talking about, probably in the next 5 to 10 years, these things are going to start to shift. So, with both sets of chillins, like we've got to get them ready for their career.
Yeah.
So what advice would you give to your kids or someone coming up of, areas to focus on, types of roles that they may want to sort of steer towards? What would you say, Mike?
I think in terms of, and like, unless you're going to be like a doctor or a lawyer, like if you don't have those type of, if you're like 16, and some of us still don't know what we want to do.
Mm-hmm.
You have to have I think it's really about, can you problem solve, and can you take courses that help you with that? Because as you said, these people are going to be our kids are going to be going to jobs that don't even exist today.
Right.
But they have to be able to understand how to get into those jobs, or
right.
see the opportunity of of like an app developer. Like, so you need to be able to see those things coming. And have you have enough of a base to then parlay yourself into those jobs? Because as more of these very like, and even Rhonda said, these are the jobs people don't even want to do anyway.
Mm-hmm.
It's the jobs that people hate, right? So you have to be thinking beyond that. And when you like enter a company, it's like, what are the jobs beyond like the entry level? Because they're not going to exist anymore. So you're going to have to get in already at the mid level, and you have to have enough of a base of understanding. And it's not, I mean, it may not be like geography if you want to get into business.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's going to help if educators help with that and start teaching in a way that will help people see these opportunities as opposed to what's this old like method of doing business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think you're going to start to see more of a generalized learning.
Right.
I think it's going to be sort of, like you said, unless you want to go and be a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer or one of the hard sciences, that's cool. I think
Right.
other than that, you're going to see the liberal arts sort of start to blend together. And I don't think that that's a bad thing, because I think it allows you to then be very, very well rounded.
Right.
I know in my own sort of educational career, I tried to, I did the courses that I needed to I had a double major, so I did what I needed to
Oh,
do. Yes,
oh,
I have two,
flexing,
I have two,
flexing
I
there.
have two majors. Um, it was a requirement of my program. Um,
Okay.
but other than that, like I took things in university like archaeology, um, film and society. And these were not, it wasn't like you took the film course because it was easy. It actually wasn't.
Right.
Um, but I wanted to have a very diverse set of experiences and education from which to draw. And that has continued into my professional career, where people from the outside look at all of the different certifications that I have and say, how do those things fit together? And I look at it as, how do you not see how these things fit together?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And so I think you're going to see more of a generalized education. And then once you do grow up and figure out what you want to be when you grow up, I think that's when you'll start to see more of a specialization, like
Right.
a micro specialization, where I am a uh, YouTube lighting expert, or I work on RFPs only for local government agencies, like
Mm-hmm.
very, very micro niched. Um, and that's cool, because we need those too.
You do. I think one of the things I want to throw in there is also ha teaching people how to learn on their own,
Yes.
right? So yes, you go to university and everything's prescribed for you. Like here's the course, here's the outline, you
Yes.
do that. But when you leave university, you you need to continue to learn. But if you're just waiting for someone to tell you, that isn't going to happen. And it's non-traditional learning. Like not everything is, oh, I need to learn something, so I'm going to go back to night school. Like that's not
Right.
necessarily a way of learning, right?
Right.
Like how do you find on this thing called the internet? How do you find information that'll help you through like reading about it, webinars, podcasts? Like those are, and people have to stop thinking of those as that's not like real learning. Like
Hmm.
you have to go get a credit from somewhere. That's not necessarily true. You have to learn, you have to figure out how to get new knowledge, and that is a skill in and of itself.
Right. Right. And I mean, podcasts are a viable source of learning. And we chatted last week, and I sort of jokingly, but I mean, the more I think about it, it wasn't a joke, but I jokingly said, when we look at some of the episode ideas that we have for this show, it almost reads like a table of contents for a book. And so, you could say that we should just transcribe these episodes and then put it in a book.
Right.
Or hire a ghostwriter or somebody to do that work for us. So if there's any ghostwriters or anybody interested in working with us that likes our show, that enjoys the show and wants to see it grow, but it really is. I think we've only started to scratch the surface on this. But when you look at, how do you deal with HR? How do you deal with people? How do you build engagement? How do you manage change? Like these are sections of a business transformation book. So, that is a viable source of learning.
Yes. And so to my point, it doesn't have to be in a textbook that you get in a university course, right?
Yeah. No, I agree with you, man. The university, college, whatever, gives you the piece of paper. It speaks more to your commitment to get something done. Like, it's not easy.
You could look at it that way, yes.
It's not easy to get a degree.
Yeah.
Right? It's 4 years, takes a long time. It speaks to your commitment to start something and see it through.
Yeah.
That's a character thing. Like, you can have that without doing that. It's a something to point to and say, I did that.
Right.
And by the way, I'm not saying I regret doing my degree. Like, it was great, but I didn't realize at the time how little I actually knew until I started actually doing things.
I also think you have to think of university is just the start of your learning. It's not like, I did my 4 years, I'm done forever. Like, no. Because I think that's how people, like, I'm done learning. That's just the start of learning. And to your point, it's teaches you how to see things through, but it is only like the base of your learning. Like, your specialized learning is when you hit the marketplace.
Right. Well, I've got a story on that, but I think that's for another episode.
Okay.
Like, it's just it would go too long. But yes, you're bang on.
So do you have anything else, Vince?
No.
Okay. Man, we went all kinds of directions in this one, but I think those are all those are all, as you start weaving it together, all the implications of AI. It's not just like this, like you have Alexa and it's going to be cool. And like, there's implications beyond just like, you can automate a process. Like, it goes to education, it goes to jobs you have to do or jobs you have to think of. It goes to how you continually learn. So to Rhonda's point, it's going to have massive implication in the world.
Yeah, and it all boils down to something that I know that we're big believers in, and that's mindset. You want to get involved in a transformation or a transformational program or project or whatever. Like, the mindset. So if I was hiring to build a team, the thing I'm looking for is mindset, because that's something that's much harder to teach. I can teach you I can teach you how to be a business analyst. I can teach you how to look at a process and identify waste. I can teach you that. But if you are of the mindset that change is bad, what's wrong with how we do things today, then you're not going to be effective in a transformation. And I find myself, even, whenever there's a big change, organizationally or within a program or a project, whatever, I too go through the shock of, oh my God.
Yes.
Like, oh no.
Wait a minute. Yes.
But it's usually gone within a day, because I realize, look, this is natural.
Yeah.
It's like, change is inevitable. So, like, complaining about it isn't gonna fix it. So, but everyone goes through that. Everyone goes through it. I'd like to think I'm pretty transformation mindset guy. But even I go through big change. Uh-oh.
Yep. What does that mean?
What does that mean? I'm
Yep.
scared. I'm scared.
Yeah.
So it's natural, but how you respond to that is key. So you've got to have that mindset in place. Otherwise, you cannot be successful. And, we've talked about it and we will continue to talk about it. If you don't have the mindset for transformation within your organization, and this comes back to culture, then you are in trouble.
Yes. Because as wide-reaching as that one thing that we talked about today, where we went in whole kinds of different directions, there's like 80 of those in like a week.
Mm-hmm.
And so if your mindset isn't to continually change and pivot and like move at this pace, you are going to hate being in a transformation.
Mm-hmm.
And trying to transform a business.
Unless it's in government, and then you don't have to worry about pace.
Oh, flexing again.
Government goes at its own pace, and that's fine. Like, you don't want to create shockwaves in the citizenry, but just taking shots at government here.
Yeah.
Ooh.
All right. So with that,
that's it for me.
Where can people send DMs about that last comment?
So all the government employees can send all of their angry mail to Michael Martino at Michael Martino on Twitter. And if you have good things to say, then you can
Then it should also go to Michael Martino.
Send them to vincentmirabelli.com, and that's the best place for me, or michaelmartino.ca.
Yeah.
Mike, a great conversation, buddy. This was fun. You were fired up.
I was. I told you.
No, I
told you.
All right.
Look forward to our the next guest. Probably in a few weeks around data. So if everyone, and telling the story of data. So peeps, look out for that one, because that one should be. I always love when we have guests.
And I'll try to sequence it. We've built enough of a backlog now at this. Let's just remove the fourth wall here. We've built enough of a backlog that I might be able to sequence these 3 episodes consecutive, but we'll see. So even if we do record in a couple weeks, but this has been great, Mike.
All right.
And as always, I hope you enjoyed listening to the Business Not As Usual podcast with Vince and Mike. See you.
Please send us comments.
Oh yeah, comments. Please
send us comments.
Share. We actually ran a contest.
Topic ideas.
We didn't talk about this. Okay, I was about to close. We ran a contest in advance of this. Of us launching, and we just launched our first full episodes with the hashtag Vince sent me and hashtag Mike sent me, and it was an absolute blowout.
It was.
So Vince sent me was the clear winner, and so
yes, it was.
So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take all those who submitted because I sent you, and we're gonna randomly pick one of you to be a future guest on the show. Oh, that was the prize. So one of you will be a future guest.
And then every subsequent week we'll pick another one. So you're all going to be guests.
No, because then that takes the specialness out of it.
Okay.
Only one of you will be a guest. Right. So we'll randomly select you. But anyways, this has been just saying I won. This has been the Business Not As Usual podcast with Vince and Mike.
All right. See you next time.